is section 6.1.2, and it's called Summary of Solving Equations. It says, what kind of equation can I solve now? So 613 says, as you solve the equations below, be sure to record all of your steps carefully. Okay, so the most important part here is not the answer, but the steps that it takes to get to the answer. All right, and check your solutions if possible. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the original problem and you're going to write it down. So for A, where it says solve for H, then it has a little colon, then it lists the problem, which is A equals 1/2 BH. I wrote mine in blue, okay, so that you could see what was the original problem and you could see what was the work that's done, okay? Then I took my highlighter and I highlighted for the variable that they asked me to solve for, which in this case is which one? H. So I highlighted the H. Once you highlight the variable that they want you to solve for, you can see what's happening to it, right? That H has two things happening to it. It's being multiplied by B, and it's being multiplied by 1/2. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2, right? So what's the inverse operation of dividing by 2? Perfect. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. So notice how I put parentheses in with 2 inside of it on both sides, because that's the inverse operation. Write that down, okay? That means that the 1/2 and the 2 are going to cancel, and we're just left with BH. And on the left, we're left with 2A. Then you look and see what's still happening to that H. That H is being multiplied by B. What's the inverse operation of multiplying by B? Dividing by B. So I did divide by B, divide by B. Okay, the B's cancel over here, and we're left with just H. And then over here we have 2A over B. So I just switched sides. And I've solved for H, which is what they asked me to solve for. So I'm done. All right, any questions on A? We're good? Okay, let's look at B. So for the first step of B, you're going to copy down the problem. So the problem is x times the 2x minus 1 equals the 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. So the first step is always just write down the problem. For part B, they want you to solve for x. So I took my highlighter and I highlighted where x was at. It appears multiple times, okay? So when you have your variable on both sides of the equal sign, you want to figure out, okay, how can I get it to one side or the other? It's usually better to have it, it's usually easier to have it on the left. So we're going to move it eventually to the left side. All right, but before we do anything else, we're going to distribute. So I drew distribute rainbows here and distribute rainbow here. All right. So I'm going to multiply x times 2x, which is 2x squared, x times -1, which is -x. And then there's nothing to simplify on the right side yet, so I just copied it down. Then I noticed that I have 2x squared over here and 2x squared over here. Same thing on both sides. So what should I do? Subtract them from both sides, which is, you could just cross them off. So on the left, you're left with -x, and on the right, you're just left with 5x minus 12. Still have x's on both sides. So to move them to one side or the other, I subtracted 5x from both sides. That moves all of my x terms over to the left. What is -x minus 5x? -6x, right? So I have -6x equals -12. So I divide both sides by -6. And the final answer, I ran out of room down here, is x equals 2. All right, any questions on part B? All right, let's jump down to C. For C, you're going to start by writing down the equation. The equation is 3x plus 6y equals 24. The variable that they wanted me to solve for was y. So I took my highlighter, highlighted the y. Okay? Then you're able to see what's happening to that y. It's being multiplied by 6, and 3x is being added. So the first thing I did is I subtracted 3x from both sides. When you subtract 3x, you're left with 6y on the left. The negative 3x moves over to the right side of the equal sign, and the plus 24 is still over there. You can't combine them because they're not like terms. Okay? Then the only operation happening to the y is that it's being multiplied by 6. What's the inverse operation of multiplying by 6? You want to divide everything by 6. So I did divide by 6, divide by 6, divide by 6. That works out well for the y, right? Because that completely cancels. But the negative 36x, that reduces, right? To negative 1/2 x. And then the 6 goes into 24 4 times. And we've solved for y. Right? Any questions on part C? All right, let's go over to D. So for D, you want to start by copying down the original problem. And the variable that they want you to solve for is x, which appears more than once. It appears on the left side of the equal sign, and it appears on the right side of the equal sign. So I highlighted it twice. Okay? That reminds me I need to get it to one side or the other, preferably the left. And on the left side of the equal sign, I'm also seeing a set of parentheses, which means I'm going to need to what? Distribute. So I drew my distributing rainbow here and here. Okay? So I'm going to keep the 2, just bring the 2 down, but then I need to take that negative 3 and multiply it by the 2x to get negative 6x. And then I need to take the negative 3 and multiply it by the negative 1 to get positive 3. And then on the right side, there's nothing to combine, so I just rewrote it. All right? Now I'm going to combine this 2 and the 3. 2 plus 3 is 5, so I just changed that to 5. Now something weird happens. On the left, I've got negative 6x plus 5. And on the right side of the equal sign, I've got negative 6x plus 5. What do you notice about those two binomials? They're the same, right? If I add 6x to both sides and I subtract 5 from both sides, I get 0 equals 0. Does 0 equal 0? Yeah? So you give this weird answer that's called all real numbers. All real numbers. All right, that's one of those weird answer ones, but we kind of like those. All right, any questions on D? All right, jumping down to E. Start by copying down the problem. We've got 2 times 5x plus z equal to 30x plus 3y plus 10. And I highlighted the variable that they want me to solve for, which in this case is x. And again, it's on both sides of the equal sign. So I realized, I'm going to have to move it to one side or the other. But first, I want to distribute. So I drew my distribute rainbows. And I multiply 2 times 5x, which is 10x, and 2 times z, which is 2z, and then the right side stayed the same. Okay, now I'm going to, what did I do? I subtracted 30x from both sides to move it over to the left, and in the same step, I subtracted 2z from both sides to move it over to the right side of the equal sign. That simplifies quite a bit for me. That leaves me with negative 20x, and then negative 2z over here, plus the 3y, plus the 10. And I almost have the x by itself, except for it's being multiplied by negative 20. So the inverse operation of multiplying by negative 20 is to divide by negative 20. So I divide everything by negative 20. These cancel, and I'm down to just my x. And then I just rewrite this as 20 and switch signs on everything up here because positive and a negative, positive and a negative. Okay, so this was negative because goes to positive. This was positive, goes to negative. And this was positive, so goes to negative. Just watch your signs carefully on that. I almost messed up, but then I caught myself. Okay? Any questions on E? All right, let's look at F. All right, so for F, you want to start by copying the original problem down. And then the variable that they want you to solve for is X. There's a lot of X's there. So I highlighted 4 times. So that's a lot of X's. All right? And there's a lot of parentheses. So not only do I need to distribute on the left, but on the right, I have a binomial times a binomial. I showed the double distributive, which is what we call FOIL. If you want to do the rectangle box thing, that works with that too. Okay? All right, so I did 4x times x, which is 4x squared. And then I did 4x times 1, which is 4x. That's just the left side. Now let's do the right side of the equal sign. So we're going to take the 2x and multiply it by the 2x, which is 4x squared. Then we have to take that same 2x and multiply it by the 5, and that gets us 10x. Now we're going to move to the negative 3. So negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x, and negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. So that's a lot of terms on both sides. But one thing you're going to notice right away is that both sides have a 4x squared. So if you have the same term on both sides, just subtract it. So I subtracted 4x squared from both sides. That simplifies it a little bit for us. That gets us down to 4x equals 4x minus 5. And if you subtract 4x from both sides, you get 0 equals negative 5. What's weird about that answer? Yeah, does 0 equal negative 5? No, 0 equals 0. So remember in D, when we got 0 equals 0, we said all real solutions, but now we've got 0 equals negative 5, which it doesn't. So we say no solution. No solution on that one. Okay? So 2 weird answers. D was a weird answer and F was a weird answer. Okay, so if you get 0 equals 0, it's all real numbers. But if you get 0 equals some number that it doesn't equal, you say no solution. All right, any questions on F? All right, let's move down to G.